Welcome out there, Internet land, for this extra spooky season, one of my very favorite times of year. And I am Bracey here for the Comic Crusaders, and today we are going to be speaking with the creators of the anthology horror film Sinphony. Let's bring in some folks.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, many guests today, y'all.
Hello.
Hello.
It's like the Mickey Mouse Club.
Is that everybody? I thought we had one more coming in.
There would be maybe Seb. All right.
Oh, just switch your room. All right, so first thing first, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Really enjoyed your films. I'm very excited to get this chance to speak to you all and discuss the project. So first things first, for those who don't know, can you tell the audience what exactly is Clubhouse Horror? How this all started? What's the germination, and how did this go from, my understanding, like an online sort of radio play anthology, if I'm correct, into this film series here?
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that because the man that should be here talking about it has not shown up yet. But so I guess Clubhouse was this new social app at the time during sort of like the start of COVID. And, my partner, Sebastien Bazile, he was having writer's block one day with a project that we were working on. We were actually in the middle of producing a film that we were going to shoot down in Trinidad and Tobago. And with COVID, everything stopped, and he was just sort of working on some of our other projects, and I guess got writer's block, and it was like 4 a.m. and he hopped on this thing called Clubhouse. And it's a sort of social only social media app. Audio only social media app. And, he got into a room that was focused on horror, and he met all of these wonderful people that you see here. And so, I guess, all these guys were just chatting about all things horror, the things that they love, the favorite movies. And it just turned out that everyone also were aspiring filmmakers. And so he sort of just mentioned that, like, if you get me a script, if you get me a short 10-minute script, I bet you I can convince my partner, Michael, who's me, to produce these films. And meanwhile, I have not had this conversation with him at all. So so the next morning he wakes up and he finds a script in his inbox, and he reads it, and he goes, "This is great." And he's like, "I guess we're doing this." And so he reaches out to me and he tells me, "Hey, I met all of these random strangers that were going to produce their films." So you can imagine it was a little crazy for me, because I was like, one, what the hell is Clubhouse? Two, like, who are these people? Like, what? So it was a little strange, because it was like the equivalent of just saying, "Hey, I met a bunch of random people on Facebook and we're just gonna finance and produce their films." And sure enough, like, we what happened was we did it. I read one of the scripts and I realized, I was like, hey, these are actually really good. So the next step was like, let's go on Zoom and make sure they're not like weird robots or fake like AI talking to us. And so we did that.
That's certainly a thing these days.
It certainly is, right?
Make sure we're not a catfish.
Yeah. And we just went with it. We were like, what, we're gonna do this. And so we decided to just kind of go ahead and greenlight them as they were coming in to make sure they were good. And we just went right to production, and here we are today, ready to go wide release this weekend.
Yeah, I love it. I like having worked in comics off and on for the last few years. I enjoy the process of like just getting on the internet. And it's like the cool kids just seem to always find each other, and it just leads to a really amazing opportunity. So really excited to hear how that all happened for you. I think you've actually answered one of my questions by giving me this little intro, though, because I was going to ask, did you guys have like an overview of things? Did you have your bookends, and did you fit the stories for it? But it sounds like the stories came in, and then you developed the bookends to go around the story, and you managed to have that thread of like the song that goes on throughout the series.
Yeah. So, one of the things that was important was, obviously, we just didn't want to get a bunch of short films coming in, because then all you're doing is watching a bunch of short films together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew that we wanted to bring it out as a feature. So Sebastien and I, really thought through what would work without, having to create an extensive story to tie all these together. And so we just found this really effective way to use sort of a wraparound story, but with this common thread of using this song. And this song is sort of interweaved within all of these different shorts, and that's what's causing sort of the horror that's happening across all of them. And what's so great is like you kind of experience this song in different genres that fit the different styles of these shorts. So that's one of the real exciting things about it. You watch it and it's all over the place.
Well, we got a new contestant.
Hey, Steve.
And Sebastien did mention, he did text me saying he's in a waiting room to come in, but I guess there's a limit to how many people are in the room.
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
So that's why my guy in the chair had to step off there.
Okay.
So I guess we'll figure out how to do that, because I'd love to get his input as well. The Sinphony song is very intriguing. I did appreciate the fact that it did go across several different genres. Well,
There he is.
all right, that's fantastic. So the is the Sinphony something you had somebody create for you, or did you guys come up with the song? How did that come about?
So we
that's
have
a key feature, obviously.
Yeah, we have a really fantastic composer, David Feslian, and one of the things we decided to do was, we wanted a song, and so Sebastien and I and him kind of came together and just wrote the lyrics to the song. I might add I've never written a song before, so I'm like, I don't know, does this even sound good? But we did it, and with his capability, obviously forefront and center, he was able to really kind of turn it into all of these different versions that fit these films. So it was something that we definitely created from scratch, as we put this one together.
I like the I don't know if you had a purpose for the song when you came into it, but like as an audience member, I do remember like trying to decipher it and figure out what was going on, and I think that's kind of fun as an audience, like trying to figure out like, let you in your fortress, like your defenses come down, and just kind of you create your own story from that. And the various vocal styles that you chose for it, some of them were really fun. It kind of turned into a fun pop song, and others were like, wow, this is really haunting. So kudos on that. One thing I did notice through the series is it seems to be, and I'm going to ask some of you guys in turn, there feels like there's a strong theme of witchcraft, and obviously we have the demonic presence of Sinphony at the beginning and the end, and she pops up a little bit here and there. Was that intentional, or did several of you guys just happen to say like, hey, I feel like writing about witches?
We were given a lot of latitude in the stories we told. Really, Sebastien and Michael, our executive producers, gave us a few parameters. It should be 10 minutes or less. It should be scary. The concept should be something that if they were interested in it, it could be adapted, expanded into a feature film. And then it needs to incorporate in some way this song. So beyond that, it was up to us to determine, what's the nature of the threat involved, and even, is it just, what subgenre of horror does it fall into? And we range from slashers to cryptids and witchcraft and of course comedy. You've got Haley and Kimberley in particular, writing some really funny pieces. And pregnancy is kind of a threat in a little way with Nichole's. So we had a lot of leeway, which was really exciting as artists. We could explore whatever territory we wanted. And then we did each find a way to tie in that song. And we asked our composer, David, to help us turn it, create a version of it that was most appropriate to each of our stories. In my case, mine is set in Tennessee, where I live. And so we chose a kind of folky Americana country version of that song. And then you go to Kimberly's, and it's it's more of a Kimberly, how would you describe it? Is it like a late 60s, early 70s style?
Yeah, like really retro. I wanted to do something really timeless with it, so you can't really place it, even though there's an Alexis in the in the film.
Yeah, but that really fit in with that whole happy homemaker sort of thing that you would see in the 1950s sort of sitcoms. Fathers knows best. So like, you guys really all and your composer really did a fine job of crafting the song to each of your stories. So big props to that.
Yeah,
I couldn't help but notice a lot of the stories, I don't know if this was purposeful or not. but it all felt very female centric, from things that are can be potentially harrowing for a woman, like pregnancy, to getting older, and then you had the wife who appeared to be abused. Like, again, is this something that you guys just individually thought of, or are you guys like, hey, this might be an interesting story to tell as a thread that goes throughout the stories?
That's really interesting, Bracey. I'd never actually thought about that, but I think actually most of the films have a female lead other than Steven. What were you thinking?
Steven.
Yeah.
But I
mean,
don't...
there's a long tradition of having female protagonists, certainly in the last 30, 40 years in horror films. And a lot of horror, not all of it, but a lot of it is about vulnerability. And obviously, there's women experience vulnerability in society. I think that's probably part of the connection there with female protagonists in horror. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, you guys have a balance between like dealing with the vulnerability of certain female issues and the things women have to go through, but there's also a strength that's lent to a number of the characters in the same right.
Yeah.
I think it's a couple of things in that more and more people in general of all diversity are able to make films now. We have access to equipment. We have networks that can, put us together. And this is a great opportunity for a lot of us women who have our stories and wanted to, our executive producers are so wonderful in that they really made our voices important and listened to us and honored our stories, which, I mean, you don't get that as a newbie. So I'm just so honored to have been a part of it. And yeah, I come from I've been a mom for 19 years, and it really, when you've lived a long life and you get to tell your stories and kind of be present on the screen for women that have been through similar things, it's just a really special thing.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, like, obviously we all write from our experience or things that we, become aware of. So it's really interesting to always get somebody's perspective in their process, I find. And speaking of which, what brought you all into this, like the horror genre? What was the appeal? Is there you're all just big nerds for horror like myself, or is there something specifically about horror? In brief, if you will.
I think part of that had to do with Clubhouse and how it came together. So a lot of us met through the horror Clubhouse that Jed Shepard and Alex Neuer and Seb kind of put together. And then also in screenwriting rooms as well, where we tried to fight for the proper ways of writing screenplays against some charlatans. Go ahead, Seb.
As well.
Yes, absolute horror nerds.
I think what you were asking is, I think we all grew up watching. I mean, me personally, there are certain things that I grew up watching. I was just way too young to have watched them. Invaders from Mars, Cat's Eyes, I saw when I was 5 or 6, and then I couldn't sleep for 6 months. I was terrified that little thing would come and take my breath, and it's and thank God for my brother Joe, who came to the premiere in Brooklyn, and he would check under the bed just as a way of protecting me. And he was like, "Why are you watching those things?" But I just couldn't stop.
I love it. It sounds so much like my own upbringing, and just immediately drawn to it. And then you become fascinated with it, and once you become fascinated, you stop being afraid of it, and you're wondering how to produce your own material. Let me get into some specifics here. All right, I'm just going to go down my list here. Let's start with Mother Love. So, Jason, this is going to be for you.
Yeah.
Now, this was particularly interesting. I see that you had a mystical consultant for the film, and she actually is the voice of one of your witches. Like, how did that come about?
Crystal McKnight, she's one of our producers too. She happened to be a priestess and knows about these things. And my big thing is I'm a little superstitious, so I had her do kind of a cleansing ritual. I had her go through the script and make sure what we were saying wasn't like offensive or going to trigger any kind of apocalypse or any of our crew mysteriously dying. The stories of like poltergeist and some of the other stories of like people just mysteriously getting hurt or whatever. I was like, look, whether people believe in that or not, I wasn't going to take any chances with the lives of my crew. And, you know, we also did it during COVID, and we were very safe about that. And nobody on any of our sets got sick with COVID, which was amazing.
Fantastic.
So I'd say all the blessings worked. I'm going to give Crystal full credit on that. She's amazing.
Now, one of the things I found kind of humorous about the film is as your lead is talking to her coven sisters over the phone, they're very nonchalant about the fact that there's a killer in her house.
Yep.
I mean, she's getting stabbed, and like, oh God, that sounds like that hurts a lot. And I found that kind of funny. Can you tell me about that? Was that intentionally funny, or is like what the kind of idea was there?
The whole concept from the beginning was kind of like Halloween meets the Evil Dead. So you can't fully do that without the comedy aspect. And actually at our premiere in New York recently, I never really realized how funny the film was until we saw it with that audience who really was into it and laughing at all the beats. And the fact that they were laughing during mine and then like being appalled, you know, when everything happens, I thought was a huge win. And then, you know, the humor and Haley's and Kimmy's as well, just like played like just awesome on the big screen. And yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about the film is like, you're not just going to get one thing. Like when it's gory and it's horror. And when it's funny or sweet, it's there. So there's really something for everyone, you know?
Yeah, I really like the Dutch angles you're using as the camera sways back and forth as she's crawling down the hallway. That really just ramped up the tension of that moment.
Yeah.
Jason's has a great kinetic energy to it. I mean, there's just a you know, there's fun, you know, motion and a lot of tension, and his makeup and effects artist, especially like the protagonist. She just looks dreadful and kind of beautiful at the same time after she's dead.
The throat slit looked great. Yeah,
it's funny because
yeah, go ahead.
The throat slit's funny. I'm sure Mike's laughing too because it was kind of a big thing. I probably shouldn't get into the specifics of it. It became a thing. But Christine Garilaga, our protagonist, was so amazing. Her emotional moments with the child, just looking at him, what you saw in her face. And then when she needs to be a badass, she's a badass. And then it goes from there, her physicality. And then like Greg was saying, you know, Margaret Kerrigan, who did our makeup and effects, she has a company called Pandora Effects. They just killed it. Also, she co-created the mask of the Ripper with me. I did concept art. She sculpted it. They cast it. She painted it. So that's an original character that we actually made for the film. And it was just such an extraordinary experience all the way through. You know?
Well, I did love the nod to Halloween with the clown mask and the POV as she charges out of the closet to try and defend herself and her child. So
yeah,
really effective stuff there.
Thank you so much.
Now, let me move on to Forever Young, Haley. All right, so imagine my delight when I find out that you not only wrote and direct this piece, but you also starred in it. And I've never had the opportunity to ask this. What is it like to direct yourself?
It's challenging. It's definitely not an easy task, but it does help by you know, because I've written it and I have been acting for a really long time, and acting is kind of the better skill I guess I have, or the one I'm the most comfortable in. I've kind of been with the character before I step on set for a good you know, since the second I put pen to paper. So it's actually easy. I was more focused directing on the technical side of things and making sure the composition of the frame was correct, rather than needing to necessarily be too worried about myself, I guess, because I could tell exactly when I didn't say the lines as I had planned them for the weeks leading up to this in my head, or if you know, whoever I'm playing off, if they can't respond to me in this way that I would like them to as a director, it's probably because I, as the actor, am not giving them the right kind of response. So I had a really good team too, though. I will say it would not have been possible without my producer, Tim Wilrich, who was there like every step of the way. He's also Mark's producer, and we owe him, I think, everything. And then my partner is also my cinematographer, Kieran Craig, and that is very handy when you have access to your partner to your cinematographer 24/7, because I really got to plan everything I wanted to do on set for the lead up to it with him, and he it's almost like having a second director there who remembers, if I'm focused on the acting side of things at the moment, he kind of knows, hey, don't forget this bit, and you had wanted to do this, and we had the storyboards and the shot list and everything. So it was a real team effort, which I think it has to be when you have limited time. And also I've taken 3 of the roles on set, which probably should have been divvied out a bit more, but I'm glad it was effective.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because in particular, I really like the cinematography of your particular piece, because there are multiple stories going on within yours. Like it goes like from one set piece to another set piece to another set piece. And I'll tell you, the opening scene there, I was like, I could dive into this as like a comedy about a woman, beginning to hit that age period. Because you can, I'm 54 myself, so I remember like, oh God, I'm actually getting old, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing like all the existential dread, that would have been a charming movie in and of itself to make. But then you highlight that with the eerie kind of slow-mo dancing, and then the blackout room, and then finally that garishly lit 1990s with all the tropes and trappings in there. It was like, so that was just lovely to see all that.
Thank you. I'm so glad you caught all of that stuff too, because I've been a filmmaker without being a director for a bit, and I just love movies and love stylistic movies like and shows like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where the camera is as much as part of the story as the acting and the set, the props and everything to use to tell a story. And so that was very fun. It was fun doing the color grade just to switch it up and go back to the throwback of the 2000s. And I'm glad that comes across.
Yeah, you really sold it. It looked perfect. I mean, it really looked like I was watching something from back in that time once again. And I have to say that, like, listening to you talk with the veneer on, with the braces and the extra lisp that it added to your speech, just sold it all the more.
It was very fun. I wore those probably a little bit longer than I needed to, just because they were entertaining to myself.
And of course, only Brittany looked good in those. So
without question, there is no competition for her.
That bit killed in the theater. That was
oh, I can imagine. Like that was so good. I mean, they're all great, but like it gets me in a different sort of way, because being somebody who's older, and my formative years being the 80s through the 90s through the 2000s, like I remember that period with a great deal of clarity. So like that just gave me the big nostalgia chuckle. All right, let's move on to the Keeper and Wes. Yeah, let's see.
That's Wes and me. Wes isn't here tonight, but
okay.
He and I created that together. And Wes and I are longtime collaborators. We ran a theater company together in Nashville, and so it was very natural for Wes and me to work together in writing, producing, and directing the film.
Now, one thing that because you have the monster boy here, who is going to end up at the end of the book and we see him at the start in the flashback sequence, I couldn't help but wonder. So we've got the same child actor, and the parents. It doesn't look like the actors are the same as the prologue as they are here, and yet there's a sort of a favor to them. The father seems to have the same sort of hairstyle and goatee. Are those meant to be the parents that we see in the opening, even though they're different actors?
So I'll have to ask Sebastien and Michael about that, because they actually wrote the framing device using that same child actor.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, from the Keeper, this man, this woman, and this child come to this inn. They need a place to stay for the night. We don't really know what their relationship is. We assume it's a husband, wife, son, but
right.
That's never actually stated. So there's some intentional mystery around what is the relationship there, and who's really pulling the strings. I think who's pulling the strings by the end of the short. But in terms of the relationship of that mysterious monster boy to the framing device, Mike or Sebastien, you guys want to talk about that?
Yes, the monster boy is basically, so it's the baby in the beginning. That's the monster boy. So Sinphony, it's I guess she's the devil or she's a demon, and she's the one who sings. When she sings her song, her voice, that's what's causing all the calamities throughout the whole story. So that monster boy, basically, when she delivers the baby, and then she sings, and then she infused something into the baby, and then the baby turns into a monster, and the baby basically eats her, it's a her, by the way. The baby is a her, so that's why I keep referring to her for playing a boy. So she eats, her parents. So it's all because of Sinphony. So Sinphony, so if you want to know the backstory of that, the Sinphony is basically raising an army. That's the original idea.
Okay.
Originally we had about 25 kids in the script. It's like a cult. And she's raising up all these kids, and then Mike and I, we thought about it. We're like, there's just way too many kids to have at the end. So the idea was to have a cult of kids that she's raising.
When you make the feature,
when we make the feature, yeah. So that's what's behind it. That's why Sinphony is in the beginning.
Okay, that definitely adds a level of clarity to the mother love story, because I was wondering about that, because we see something at the end that I don't want to spoil. So I want to get into some details, but like not spoil anything, obviously. So that gives me some interesting things to go off of now. As for the keeper, you do a brilliant job. You guys do a brilliant job of not really misleading the audience, but giving them clues to allow them to make certain jumps in logic. And if I just turned into this not knowing it was a horror movie, I wouldn't necessarily be waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I thought that was very clever and very well executed as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, definitely we try to use misdirection, and you go into this very, very clearly along, this man, woman, child arrive at this home of an innkeeper. He's opened up his home, turned into an inn, and he's got various guests staying with him. And pretty quickly he can tell there's something really wrong with this family. And he is just as friendly a guy. He's maybe so friendly that maybe there's something wrong with him, who knows? But it seems pretty clear pretty quickly that it looks like a domestic violence situation to him, and maybe something he hasn't faced before, but he wants to step in and help. And he doesn't have a clue what's really going on. And we hope that if we've done our jobs well as writer and director, Wes and I hope that that people don't really guess, what the real threat is until it's revealed. So yeah, there's a little bit of misdirection there, but poor innkeeper. What can you do?
Well, I liked it. It all felt very organic, very natural the way it played out, and all the cues that would lead you to make those assumptions also felt very natural. So
thank you.
I was in it from the beginning.
I do want to point out that we have our innkeeper, who's an actor here in Nashville. We've worked with in theater for many years, and then worked with him on several shows. And then the man, the woman, and the child are in real life actually husband, wife, and son. Who are very involved in the theater community. They live in Orlando now, but they're really, all three are so talented, and they just played so well together. And I wondered, when we kind of set especially the man and woman at odds so strongly, how that was going to play. Oh boy, they were just brilliant. And the son is just as talented as his mom and dad. So that was a fun family. Good family fun.
Well, I did notice a number of you ended up with actors, families of actors. Like the Laszlo family in particular. Like the last one's like, oh, Laszlo. It was like, this is the son of this guy. This is going on here. It's like, so that was pretty exciting that you found like these, these generations of actors all wherever you happen to be making your films.
Yeah, I just to mention the Lazos. My friend Holly is an actress, and she's pregnant, or was pregnant at the time, and she offered to let me use her house for the filming, and then she played the mother with her baby, her soon-to-be born baby in her belly, and then her daughter, who played the young version of my lead, was also that's her daughter, and then her husband played the mysterious stranger. So yeah, it was pretty awesome to have them all there. And then shortly after the film, she actually had the baby, and I got to go meet him. It was like, yay! Oh my gosh, family's in it.
That's so fantastic. Like, because I was going to ask you guys where you secured some of your talent, but like you seem to have been very lucky to find these entire families of actors, and just must have made things so much simpler. I used to make my own short horror films myself, and like trying to wrangle people to get in your film was one of the most difficult parts of the whole process. Let's see here. Limited edition. So this is going to be from Mark. Now, Mark, you had a really intriguing idea in your story, something I hadn't seen before. I do like movies about witchcraft because people play with witches a bit differently than they do, say, like a sorcerer in a film. There's a quality to the magic witches use that leave people wondering what's actually going on. Can you tell me a little bit about this idea of stealing a moment of time and what that represents and the power that you get from that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make, because when I wrote it, I had absolutely no intention of making a witchcraft film, and but I can see with all that imagery, with the writing, with the books, why people would leap to that conclusion. But it's really what I'm trying to do there is start an origin story about a particular clans of women with a particular gift that are capturing moments in time. I live in Oxford in the UK, and we have some of the most ancient libraries available. I just think as I'm walking past through the streets of the moments of knowledge, the power these libraries have amassed if you understand what's being captured in these books. And I thought, what if that's literal?
Oh, I love that idea.
Swallowing, stealing moments in time, stealing fabric from the universe. And that's built into this story, which, again, we were asked to provide ideas which might be extendable to features. So I went high concept, and for a short, reasonably broad canvas, we did 6 different locations, all external, shooting in daylight, 3 company moves over 2 days. And we did the vehicular stuff too, to just give it that expansive feel. So I'm quite pleased with what we managed to land on the screen. To thank Seb and Mike for their trust in us, for having never met us before, And
then you continue that theme of history. Like you have that beautiful car as a set piece in the film as well. So like that, just even though it's more recent history, and I can see where you get that inspiration. I mean, like living in a place like the UK where you have like all those centuries of history built up. I live in America, so it's a very young country by comparison. Like almost nothing's built out of stone here. And boy, I can. It gives me so much more actually hearing that from you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I mean, the Bodleian Library that's in the opening shot, I think, was founded before America. Right, which is quite a thought, in terms of just the passage of time. But no, I'm delighted. I mean, we were concerned that there were so many layers, and would they come across? And I think it's probably one you have to rewatch a couple of times to spot all of the visual cues that we packed in, because the moment capture is done by almost like reading like Braille, hidden in the paper. So when the lead character is at the start, starting the moment capture, that's really, unless you spot a small bit at the end of the film, picked up in a second viewing. So I hope people enjoy it like that.
Okay, I kind of thought that might be the case, but I wasn't 100% sure. And the thing that led me to thinking that it was more of a witchcraft before you explained your magic system a little bit was the thing the antagonist was doing, like the rake across the face and the knife in the belly, but it's done in a sort of a dream-like its quality. So like is it happening? Is this part of a spell? Is this how a spell works? Or is there an actual physical thing that's going on that our protagonist isn't aware of because it's being obscured by a glamour of some sort?
Thank you so much for asking that, because the actors were peppering me with the same questions as we were going in through pre-production. And the way I explained it was that we are filming a duality, and a dreamlike state is a really good way to describe it. And when those moments start to punctuate through, when you see her actually attacking, you're kind of popping through the duality that we start living in the very final act that you move through. And then again, we did this practical effect, which you really can see when you're watching on the big screen, where the character steps out of her moment. We buzz through time, and then she's there behind her with her own body in the Morgan, which happens to be the body of my girlfriend, who stepped in, bless her, to be the cadaver. And we take the lens off the camera in practical fashion, flood the sensor, move the car, and replace the lens. So we didn't do that with VFX. That's an old school practical effect that we placed in.
Yeah, I used to study the craft a bit and try and apply things like lens whacking and other in-camera effects.
Yeah.
So I have I'm being the age I am, I'm very much into old school effects, both cinematic and practical effects. But I understand there is a place for CGI. It's just the overuse of it that's annoying.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
Let's see. Now. By the way, I will say, given that is an origin story, you've hooked me. I want to see more.
Me too.
Now we move on to perhaps the most charming story, Do Us Part. This was delightful in the fact that it steps away from horror, even though there's definitely a kind of a playful dread to it. And when I look at this, first thing I've got to say, I like the very clever sort of Sixth Sense way that you're doing things here, because at first you're like, oh, is there trouble in the marriage? He's ignoring her. What's going on? So I just love the setup of that so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really wanted to play in the space of pushing the boundaries of what horror could be, because we've always used horror to explore things that are in our everyday life, and grief and relationships are some of the two biggest things that we will ever have to deal with as adult human beings, and they're horrifying in their own right. And I think perhaps making them funny and silly and romantic is harder than making them scary.
I have to ask you a question. I want you to answer this in a way that's not going to spoil things for people. I almost feel bad about trying to ask it. But when I look at the film and I look at the relationship between the husband and the wife throughout the film and the things that you see that are going on, and he's aware, is he suicidal? Or is he just in that deep a sort of mourning?
I think it's potentially just the rawness of grief that he's unaware of his surroundings, almost like in like a Looney Tune cartoon where the characters running through all of these things, like the anvil dropping on their head, and, like the cannonball being shot at them, and they make it to work on time. Like he's just kind of bumbling through life because the grief is so raw and all present.
Yeah, because he's hand waving off stuff that should be a tremendous red flag to anybody else.
I mean, he's actively being haunted, and he just is completely unaware of it.
Like the toasters on the floor is like, what's that doing in here? But I also love the fact that despite that there's this horrific element going on in the midst of his pain and his grief, that it's still a love story. And that was a real surprise. I mean, like when you see what's going on with the wife's side of things, because you do get to see both sides of things, it is so bittersweet and so charming at the same time, and it does tug at your heartstrings. So a really well done piece of film there.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Like you nailed it. Okay. Well, we do not have Tabitha as director here, so. Maternally Damned. Speaking of our recent family of actors and actresses. Now, when I look at Maternally Damned, one thing I couldn't help but notice right away is when they are talking about the night of passion, which led to the baby, and the one sister says like, "Hey, bitch, you like, oh, he just nibbled," and she's like, "Well, that could turn the baby." And so once again, I go like, are these women witches? Does she know this guy's a vampire? How does she know that? What's going on here? Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Some of the inspiration for that character is my daughter, who is like completely enamored with Twilight, which is like, just this teen that's like head over heels for horror and for vampires. And in that sequence, you go past the young character. She's holding a book that says Eternal Thirst, and she's like decked out and kind of goth, and that's
okay.
her.
I couldn't quite see the title when I was looking.
Yeah.
Watching it.
Yeah, my friend designed that fake book cover, which is pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, and so she's supposed to be just this like person who's kind of obsessed and keeps like everything she says is a little bit vampire related, and her mom's like, "Oh my gosh, come on."
The title of the book is Eternal Thirst. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was awesome. I wondered if that was real or not. It was such a great title.
Yeah, it was written by my daughter.
That's a wonderful like a little piece of set dressing. It reminds me of like when Ram Zavi did a House of a Thousand Corpses, and one thing that just got me to laugh in the midst of like that gruesome grindhouse gore fest was the giant guy eating a bowl of Agatha Crispies, and like that's so cute. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
Now we have seen films where pregnancy has been treated as a body horror before, but you put a unique twist on it. Where did that idea come from?
Well, I don't want to give away the ending,
Right.
but for me, my mom loved being pregnant. She would talk about it like it's this magical thing. It was the best time of her life. And for me, I've had 2 children, and I love my children. I love being a mom, but the pregnancy part of it was miserable. My body did not like it. It felt very alien. It felt sick, especially the first pregnancy. You were like, what is happening? Is this normal? Is this normal? Is this normal? And so when I was thinking of, things that terrify me, things that I can write about, and also things that have heart and that, or allow people to kind of work through something in watching this. They get scared together. They can laugh together. They have this relief together at the end. It was being a mom and being, sharing that experience of pregnancy being scary, and that's okay. And
yeah,
then
I think. Oh, go ahead, please.
Just the ending is that I really wanted to give her power and reward her for all this pain and suffering she's been through. And so when she, the very ending is meant to be, that she becomes powerful.
Right. I like the fact that she had such a strong support system in her mother, even though her like little sister's being a little goofy with the goth stuff. Like, oh, she doesn't need that. Like, stop saying weird stuff like that. But that was a lot of fun, and one of the things I enjoyed was her keeping a journal of the pregnancy, because she was so deeply. I guess that was supposed to be her older sister or younger sister. Mom by mistake. Yeah.
No, that's okay. So the mom passes away initially, and then she leaves behind 2 sisters, and the younger sister has a teenage daughter.
Okay.
It's a little.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep a lot of details of a lot of films.
No worries at all. The journal was meant to be kind of a tool to pass time quickly, because I knew I wanted to cover her entire pregnancy and give these moments, and also kind of escalate while she's writing. Like she's processing these things happening to her body and wondering, is this normal? Is this supernatural? Like, am I going crazy? What's happening? So it was just a viewpoint into her mindset as well.
Well, it definitely works great as a device for time lapse, but also for exposition and her own internal struggle. And I did like the part was like, morning sickness. Let's scratch out all day sickness. Like so another cute little thing in the midst of like all this trauma that she's going through.
Thank you. Yeah,
you're welcome.
Do I understand correctly that you actually have the trailer? You're able to show the trailer on the stream?
Al, can we do that?
Supposedly, this Ripper asshole's clocked a dozen victims so far.
Please don't make me think about that stuff right now.
It's too long! Here alone in the cold. It's just me who hears you call. It's
just the stuff.
I don't think I'm gonna make it, man.
Robert, are you okay?
Just let me try.
Seriously.
No, it's okay.
We tried to warn her.
Perhaps it's time to head back.
You have to think about your kid.
Danny?
I'm scared, Maya. Something isn't right. It feels like something's taking control.
Now you get an idea about the film.
That just puts a great big smile on my face.
Well, I hope it looked good for you guys. On my end, the trailer was kind of staggered.
Looked fine on my end.
Looked good here. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I was worried. Like, oh, geez, I hope this isn't how it's playing for everybody. Yeah, it was like I don't know. It's just a technical issue on my end. Thankfully, just my end. Yeah, the trailer looks great. And when is the film going to be released, and where can people see it?
So the film is released this Friday, and it is going to be released on mostly all major VOD platforms, and it also has a limited theatrical release in select markets as well. But primarily, you can catch it on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Google Play. There's a wide range of digital platforms out there that will have it.
Oh, and I don't think we got to talk about Earworm yet with Steven.
Yeah, let me. I'll mention the films that we didn't get to talk about. I didn't know if that was going to be something that we could talk about, but let's go ahead and talk about Earworm. Did Steve make it, or he's not here, right?
Here he is.
Right
He's here.
Oh, he did make it. Okay, I'd heard he wasn't going to be able to make it, so that's kind of why I skipped him.
Oh, no
I've been
problem.
traveling today and just managed to hop in here.
All right, fantastic.
Make it or not, but I'm happy.
Oh, there you are up there, Steve. So, interesting thing. I did some research on parasites, and I'm kind of wondering if this is where you went, because I was writing a story about zombies based on parasitic creatures, and I'm wondering if maybe you ended up with some of the same research and the same thoughts, because parasitic creatures, fungi, spores, and other things can actually cause creatures to act in very abnormal ways to the detriment of their health to facilitate the life cycle of the fungus in question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely pulled from a particular species of fungus that's known for infecting insects, particularly ants, and that drives them to, operate, as a vehicle for spreading those spores to move to spots where it's going to best infect other creatures and things like that. And so, looking at that real life example, I'm like, okay, let's kind of dive into that. What if it, crossed over to, infecting people and mammals and stuff like that? And, what would that look like? And then tying into the song, what is the creature infected experiencing? And so I started thinking about, obviously, when perceiving things as it normally would, it's going to start hallucinating, and what if this song getting stuck in the head is like the first symptom of this parasitic fungus? Yeah,
I love there's a cleverness to that the when we get a song stuck in our head, it's called an earworm, and you play that up in the title, and we literally see like earworms later on. So that's a lot of fun there, and I do like the relationship between the father and the son quite a bit, where you see the father is maybe a little bit older and jaded about the job, whereas the son's still young and idealistic and has that integrity about him. How did you? I'm not sure what I was going to say with that, but the actors I felt like really pulled that off well, and I like the way that you showed both the tension between them, but the fact that they're still a loving father and son. He comes in with the cooler and says, hey, kind of offering the old olive branch.
Yeah. As I was kind of like working on writing the story, fortunately I have a much better relationship with my dad than these characters do. But it's kind of pulling from my own family experience of like times where it's like, hey, that's not how I want to approach this, or what are you thinking there? And like, in every relationship, be it family or otherwise, there's always that push and pull of like, I love you, but I disagree with you, and that kind of element to it. So kind of pulling from that, and also, a little bit of the humor in it, at least for me personally, is me and my dad always have songs stuck in our head. Like, it's like all the time. So we are very subjected to earworms ourselves.
Oh, Star Trek 2 just messed up everybody. Weird things crawling out of people's ears. I did like that your protagonist. It's subtle. It's not explicitly shown, but I picked up on it. But your protagonist seemed to understand the danger and actually tries to take steps to prevent things from going further. And I thought that was a really nice touch, because a lot of films these days have no concept of what it is to be subtle, especially films that come out in the summertime. It's all about the tentpole and the blockbuster. So I really appreciated seeing a touch like that.
Yeah, Thomas is a great actor. Like I've worked with him a couple of times in the past, and he's really good at bringing subtlety to the performance. And like also as far as like the script goes, I wanted it to kind of like play subtle. Like a lot of my influences are much more like the suspense thriller environment, and I really wanted to kind of play with that with this story rather than it being like straight up like horror, having that slow burn, that slow build. It's just little things get a little worse and a little worse.
And not easy to do in a short form factor like that, but I think you achieved your goal.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Because it's like
Bracey?
Yes. Is it time? Are we done?
Yeah, it's time, and what we could say, I believe that they all achieved their goals, making this amazing film right here called Sinphony, which is right here dropping Friday, baby, on the 21st. All right, it's gonna be VOD theaters everywhere, man. You gotta make it pop up. This is the future of horror. All these people right here, and would you believe out of a social platform, look at the good that came out of here. The future, for real. You're gonna dig it. It got witches, it got blood, it got gore. They got everything you want and a whole lot more, baby. This is right up the alley for Halloween. You know what it is. So thank you, guys. God bless each and every one of you on your journey. Everybody that tuned in, thank you. A big shout out to Stacey for doing what she was doing. For real, everybody, do it up. I got to see Sinphony Part 2. Then I want to see individual stories, and I want to see more of your sick minds displayed on screen. Let's make it happen, all right?
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hasta la próxima, mi gente. Huepa.